Picture this. Your successful friend from college. Good career, emotionally stable, decent guy. Last year, he just stopped. Deleted dating apps, stopped pursuing women entirely. You ask him why. He says, I'm done. Did the math. Not worth it. And you think this is just him. But I'm watching millions of men make this exact choice right now. Across every Western nation. And I've seen this before. Late Roman Empire, 3rd century AD. Young Roman men quietly withdrawing. Within 2 generations, Rome's demographic collapse contributed to civilizational decline. This isn't new. This is one of the oldest patterns in human history. What if I told you that what's happening today has happened dozens of times before? What if I told you this is a recurring pattern across civilizations spanning thousands of years? That we're watching the Great Male Disappearance, and every time this pattern appears, it precedes major societal transformation within 1 to 3 generations? Millions of men quietly withdrawing from dating, marriage, civic participation right now. Everyone's confused because they think this is unprecedented. It's not. This pattern is as old as civilization itself. I've watched it destroy empires and reshape demographics permanently. Today, I'm going to show you the exact historical pattern, the specific conditions that trigger it, why those conditions exist now in more extreme form than ever before, and what it means when I tell you we're entering phase 3, the point of no return. What you're about to learn isn't theory. This is documented historical fact, pattern recognition across millennia. Pay very close attention. Here's what historians refuse to acknowledge. The Great Male Disappearance is a recurring pattern that emerges when specific conditions align. It has happened dozens of times. And every single time, major societal transformation follows within decades. I've watched this personally. Late Roman Empire, Song Dynasty China, Heian Japan, Renaissance Italian city-states. Every time conditions align, the same pattern emerges. High-functioning men withdraw. Society panics. Interventions fail. Everything changes. But here's what makes this dangerous. Historians study these cases, but refuse to connect them to present day. They'll write books about Roman marriage decline, papers on Japanese herbivore men, studies on Chinese lying flat. But they won't say, this exact pattern is happening right now, and here is what it means. Because that requires confronting uncomfortable truths about civilizational cycles. But the historical record shows with absolute clarity male mass withdrawal isn't random. It's a predictable response to specific conditions. And those exact conditions exist today in more extreme form than any historical precedent. Let me show you how this works. Late Roman Empire, 2nd to 4th century. Marriage required enormous resources. Women expected men to provide urban housing, servants, social status. The economic bar became impossible for average men. Simultaneously, women gained property rights and could divorce easily while keeping resources. Men did the math. Increasingly, they withdrew, focused on philosophy, friendship, modest living. Rome panicked, implemented bachelor taxes, marriage incentives, public propaganda. Nothing worked, because you cannot force rational actors to accept fundamentally unfavorable contracts. But here's what makes this undeniable. Watch completely different culture. Song Dynasty China, 10th to 13th century. Confucian society placed massive obligations on married men. Extreme filial piety, expensive weddings, mother-in-law dynamics giving wives' families power over husbands. Educated men increasingly remained unmarried, focused on poetry, painting, philosophy. State tried intervention. Nothing changed the trajectory. Same pattern despite completely different cultural context. And here's where it gets eerie. Heian Japan, 794 to 1185. Court culture created impossible standards. Romantic relationships required mastery of poetry, music, complicated etiquette. Marriage meant joining wife's family in subordinate position. Capable men withdrew, became monks, wanderers, focused on aesthetic pursuits. Different continent, different values, different religion, same pattern. This is what makes pattern recognition powerful. Specific details differ. Roman law versus Confucian duty versus Japanese court culture. But underlying mechanism is identical. When cost-benefit analysis of traditional male participation becomes fundamentally negative, rational men withdraw. Always, across every culture, every era. Human nature doesn't change. Only the technological facade changes. But here's where it gets critical. The pattern requires 4 specific triggering conditions. And these conditions exist today in unprecedented intensity. Condition 1. Economic accessibility collapse. In every case, family formation cost exceeded what average capable men could achieve. Roman housing costs. Chinese wedding inflation. Economic bar rises until most men are priced out. Check today. Housing prices relative to median male income are at historical extremes. Average man cannot afford family formation. This condition is met more extremely than any historical precedent. Condition 2. Asymmetric relationship bargaining power. Every case had structures giving relationship power to women while expecting men to provide and protect. Rome's divorce laws. China's family obligations. Japan's household dynamics. Men bore obligations without security. Now watch how extreme this is today. Modern divorce law, custody defaults. Financial obligations. Men have responsibility without security. Same ancient pattern with modern legal enforcement. This condition is met. Condition 3. Cultural narrative attacking traditional masculinity. Every case involved elite culture mocking men who pursued traditional paths. Roman philosophy praising bachelor life. Chinese poetry romanticizing unmarried scholars. Japanese literature celebrating wandering monks. Check today. Traditional masculinity labeled toxic. Marriage portrayed as oppressive. Men who withdraw celebrated. Media, education, corporate policy aligned. This condition is met with unprecedented coordination. Condition 4. No clear path to status through traditional participation. Every case blocked traditional male paths to respect. Can't achieve through family economic bar too high. Can't achieve through civic participation paths captured or devalued. Ancient Rome's client system collapse. China's examination limitations. Check today. Credentialing inflation. Social mobility blocked. Traditional paths systematically closed. This condition is met. And here's what nobody's connecting. All 4 conditions that preceded male disappearance in past civilizations exist today. Not similar, identical underlying structures, with greater intensity than any previous example. You know what's remarkable? The progression is always the same. Phase 1 early adopters withdraw quietly. Phase 2 pattern accelerates as social proof validates withdrawal. We're here. Phase 3 critical mass hits. Withdrawal becomes normalized. We're entering this. Phase 4 demographic crisis becomes undeniable, coming within a decade. Phase 5 intervention attempts fail, within 2 decades. Phase 6 major transformation unavoidable, within 30 years. I've watched this 6-phase progression complete multiple times. Timeline varies, but sequence is always identical. And we're currently transitioning from Phase 2 to Phase 3, the critical threshold. But here's what nobody wants to discuss. Every time this pattern reached completion, it ended in major civilizational transformation, not always collapse. Sometimes reformation, sometimes conquest and replacement, but never return to previous equilibrium. Transformation was always fundamental and irreversible. Late Rome, demographics collapsed, eventually fell to groups maintaining functional family formation. Song China, conquered by Mongols who hadn't experienced this pattern. Heian, Japan, transformed into feudal military society. Different outcomes, but all represented civilizational transformation. Now I want to show you something terrifying. Today's triggering conditions are more extreme than any historical precedent, and technology has amplified every factor. Economic inaccessibility? Rome's crisis was geographically limited. Today, it's simultaneous across all major Western cities. Information technology means men globally recognize the pattern in real time. Asymmetric power? Roman law was harsh, but enforcement inconsistent. Today's legal system is comprehensive, efficiently enforced, and men globally share information about outcomes. Cultural attack? Rome had philosophical critique from limited intellectual class. Today has industrial-scale media, education, corporate policy perfectly aligned. Unprecedented intensity and coordination. Status blockage? Previous eras had alternative paths to male status. Today, those paths are systematically closed. Can't achieve through trade consolidated, through religion marginalized, through military small professional forces, through civic leadership captured by elites, through family economically inaccessible. Every path simultaneously blocked. The conditions have been set up more perfectly than any historical precedent. Like watching an avalanche where every factor has been maximized. And here's the mechanism making it irreversible. Male withdrawal creates conditions accelerating male withdrawal. Self-reinforcing cycle. When enough high-quality men exit, remaining relationship market worsens for women. This increases their selectivity, which pushes more men toward exit, which makes market worse. Cycle accelerates until critical mass. Ancient Rome experienced this exact progression. Initially, only marginal men withdrew. But as pattern continued, increasingly high-status men chose not to marry. Eventually, even senators frequently remained unmarried. Pattern achieved cultural lock-in. No state intervention could reverse it. We're watching the same progression. Started with men on margins, now affects middle and upper middle class. Within a decade, it will be normal for high-status men to remain unmarried by choice. Pattern is locking in right now. But here's where this gets really dark. Modern technology means this pattern is spreading globally with unprecedented speed. Ancient patterns were geographically isolated. Rome's crisis didn't affect Han China. Today, young men in Tokyo, Berlin, Sydney, Los Angeles, experiencing identical conditions simultaneously. They're aware of each other, sharing information across borders in real time. Pattern is globalizing. This has never happened before. A globally coordinated male withdrawal. Implications are civilizational in scale. Here's something historians notice, but don't emphasize. Societies experiencing this pattern become vulnerable. Birth rates collapse. Civic institutions weaken. Military capability declines as young men aren't invested in defense. Meanwhile, neighbors maintaining functional family formation maintain demographic strength. This is how Rome fell. Not to barbarians, but to groups maintaining male civic participation. Rome had wealth, technology, military tradition. But when your young men aren't forming families and aren't motivated to defend civilization, advantages become irrelevant. Group with demographics wins. I'm watching the same dynamic today. Western nations experiencing synchronized withdrawal. Meanwhile, other civilizations aren't experiencing this pattern. They're watching, waiting. Implications for relative power over next 50 years are profound. And here's what should terrify leadership. Once this reaches critical mass, it cannot be reversed through policy. Rome tried everything. Marriage laws, bachelor taxes, marriage incentives, public shaming, moral legislation, propaganda. None worked, because you cannot force rational actors to accept unfavorable contracts. Math doesn't change because state demands it. Modern governments will try similar interventions. Some already are. Marriage tax benefits. Propaganda about family values. Shaming men who don't step up. None will work. Triggering conditions remain. Cost-benefit analysis remains negative. Rational men continue making rational calculations. Pattern is locked in. So let me make this crystal clear. What we're experiencing isn't new. It's one of the oldest patterns in civilization. The Great Male Disappearance. Massive withdrawal of capable men from traditional life paths. Happens when four conditions align. Those conditions exist today in more extreme form than ever. We're in phase transition from 2 to 3. Within a decade, phase 4 demographic crisis undeniable. Within 2 decades, phase 5 interventions fail. Within 30 years, phase 6 major transformation unavoidable. This is pattern recognition, not prediction. So what do you do? First, share this video with men you know who are considering exit or have withdrawn. They need historical context. They're not broken. They're rational actors responding to civilizational conditions. Part of a pattern as old as civilization. Second, watch for these 6 phases in real time. Phase 3 is critical. When male withdrawal becomes normalized among high-status men. When that happens, and it's happening now, pattern has locked in. Everything that follows becomes inevitable. Third, prepare for major transformation within next 20 to 30 years. This isn't optional. Not fixable through individual behavior. Pattern has been set in motion. Only question is what form transformation takes. Evolution, revolution, replacement. But transformation is coming. Position yourself accordingly. Here's the uncomfortable truth most will reject. This pattern has never been stopped once conditions exist and critical mass approaches. Rome tried. China tried. Japan tried. None succeeded. Because pattern isn't a problem to solve. It's a symptom of deeper civilizational dysfunction. Treating symptoms while underlying condition remains doesn't work. Never has. Never will. This is what I've observed across millennia. Civilizations reach certain stage. Create conditions triggering male withdrawal. Pattern accelerates to critical mass. Major transformation follows. Sometimes quickly. Sometimes across generations. But transformation always comes. The Great Male Disappearance isn't a crisis. It's a transition marker. A signal that fundamental restructuring is necessary. Fighting the pattern is like fighting fever while infection remains. Pattern continues until underlying condition transforms. The choice isn't whether this happens. Pattern is already in motion. Millions have already withdrawn. Millions more are watching. Social proof is building. Phase 3 approaches. The choice is whether you recognize it early enough to understand what's coming and position advantageously for transformation ahead. I'll be watching.